Hello, my name is Shannon Anderson. Welcome to my synthesis presentation on literacy education research. I'd like to ask you a question, or perhaps you could ask yourself this question. Would you consider yourself a passive teacher or an active teacher? If you are an active teacher, you would take steps to improve your instructional practices to meet the needs of your students. For example, are you frustrated that your students are not meeting grade level standards or that your English language learners are falling too far behind? Well, don't be passive. Don't sit in the lounge and whine about it. Take action now. By starting your own research on current and past literacy education practices that are relevant to the student population that you teach. Educators must stay active in their pursuit to find the best practices for their classrooms. Now let's take a look at how we can research this topic, or any topic for that matter. I will discuss a specific article on vocabulary acquisition, and then I'll relate it to the steps one would take in researching a literacy education topic. The steps will include research framework, important ethical considerations, the research process, literature review and writing process, and the research design. In my own research, I found an article entitled Facilitating Acquisition of Young English Language Learners. I really feel that this article provides a good example of quantitative research method. The research implemented an experimental study to examine whether English vocabulary instruction, enhanced with Spanish bridging, produced greater word learning in young Spanish-speaking children. The article suggested that the use of Spanish bridging during vocabulary instruction would produce greater word learning in Spanish-speaking children. This topic interested me because of the work I did with low-income English language students, English language learner students in 2nd and 3rd grade. My students were struggling terribly with vocabulary development, and this had a negative impact on their ability to read and comprehend text. Without intervention, these literacy deficits in the primary grades were sure to follow them, and it would be a downward spiral as they progress into middle school and beyond. So it's important for educators to know how to facilitate vocabulary growth and enable English language learner students to participate fully in grade level coursework, especially with the adoption of Common Core. With effective vocabulary strategies utilized cross-curriculum, students will become empowered to gain deep understanding and knowledge of vocabulary. So let's go. By becoming an active teacher and researching a topic, in my case, the topic of vocabulary development, I was able to find research-based evidence on the best practices of vocabulary instruction for English language learners. Well, by now you're probably asking yourself, what is a quantitative research method? What have I been talking about? Well, there are various frameworks in which a research article may be presented. In the article I chose, facilitating vocabulary acquisition of young English language learners. The article comes from a quantitative research perspective. That is, it's an inquiry approach useful for describing trends and explaining the relationship among variables found in literature. We are able to look at the relationships between variables and establish cause and effect in a highly controlled circumstance and environment. In this article I reviewed, the researchers conducted a quantitative experiment to learn how Spanish bridging during vocabulary lessons would affect English language learner students. This is a good method of research because it focuses the study on a specific topic of interest. In the case of my article, the researchers wanted to know whether English-only vocabulary instruction or English vocabulary instruction enhanced with Spanish bridging would increase students' vocabulary knowledge. If educators are concerned about the vocabulary development of English language learners in their class, quantitative research articles may highlight insights on the best practices to implement in their classroom. So, how would one go about doing this research in an ethical manner? Ethics has to be a primary consideration in any research method. And if we're going to be reading these articles, these research articles that have been peer-reviewed, we want to know that they are honest and that the results are authentic. Well, the researchers that create these articles and do these studies, they have to follow a code of ethics. This way, the results will be authentic and just. As educators, we will be able to feel confident that the research articles we choose to review will be honest and ethical resources of information. One of the most important rules for any type of research is to treat all participants in an ethical fashion. Participants need to be protected from physical, psychological, and social harm. And extra precautions need to be taken, of course, with young children, as well as elders and those with special needs. In the article I reviewed, the children who were selected to participate in the study had to obtain parental consent before they could begin the vocabulary intervention program. The children's parents were also contacted by phone for an interview, and they were asked questions such as, what is your home language? What is your country of origin? What is your education level? And what type of literacy exposure do you and your children have in the home? Why would we ask all these questions? Well, by collecting background information from the minor's parents, researchers can gain authentic information relevant to the parameters of the study. The researchers in this specific article I chose were also very careful to select students who would participate fully in the study, and this is common in quantitative research methods. The participants have to be able to participate in the whole entire study. Okay, standardized assessments were also administered, in addition to the measures used for eligibility. And these were given in order for the children to participate in this program. They had to test at an English learner level. These measures were gathered in a timely manner, and the assessments were used as an index of the children's vocabulary knowledge and as a tool to further describe the children's language knowledge. Multiple measures were also administered. The students were given tests in Spanish, vocabulary tests in English, as well as 2 informal researcher-made vocabulary probes. These testing procedures were administered in a hallway of the school or in the library by a primary researcher or a trained research bilingual assistant. These sites must be respected, or wherever the research is conducted, they must respect the site. The sessions were also videotaped to ensure procedural fidelity. And then they were even reviewed by the primary researcher to ensure that the correct steps were followed during the intervention. The data and study will not be plagiarized. Everything must be truthful. The results are published and shown to the public. The data is reported honestly, and of course, appropriate language must be used at all times as in the reports as well. So those are some things to consider when you're reading the research. We know, or we can be confident that the researchers were using those ethical measures while conducting their studies. So now your head is full of all of these ethics, but you might be thinking to yourself, how or why did I choose this specific article that I've been talking about or relating back to? Well, I had a problem in my classroom. My students were having trouble with vocabulary. And so the way to go about that is to formulate a research question. A research question narrows your focus of your study to specific questions that researchers seek to answer. My initial research question, was the following. What instructional strategies promote increased vocabulary literacy development in English language learners grades K through 6? That's a mouthful. From this question, I was able to pull keywords and begin my research for peer-reviewed journal articles on the topic of best instructional strategies in vocabulary. So I would pull words like vocabulary strategies, best vocabulary strategies for ELLs, and I would input that. I would search those keywords in the Polek Library at Cal State Fullerton. Then, once I have researched some articles, then I start reviewing those articles and pull some that I think are relevant to my topic. I want to start to synthesize the information. The most effective strategies can be highlighted by synthesizing existing reviews of quantitative